So, I've just watched Trump's inaugural address. This video message is my first take on how we ought to respond to it. And, well, it was a lot to take in if you haven't seen it. It was a big kick between the teeth for so many things that many people watching this video will hold dear. And my first message here this evening is don't give up. There's never any room for giving up. There's never any possibility of giving up. There may be particular things that we have to give up on, and I'm going to come back to that, but generally giving up, no. On the contrary, what we need to do is focus on the things which are still possible and be more serious than ever about those things. So let me try to say what that means. And as I do so, I'm going to seek to respond to some specific things that Trump said. And I've taken my notes here. I've got them on this piece of paper. I'm going to start with what he said about the national energy emergency that he said he's going to declare, and that he followed up with those words that we've come to hate: drill, baby, drill. So Trump's declared an emergency. The Biden presidency, there was never a declaration of a climate emergency, but Trump has declared an emergency, it seems, a national energy emergency. So allegedly the emergency is that we haven't got enough fossil energy and we need more and more. We're in such terrible trouble. We are so out of time. Existing climate policy has definitively failed. And this declaration of Trump's is one way of measuring that. What I mean by that is this: if existing climate policy and existing climate politics and the existing climate movement had not decisively failed, then we would not have a situation where a president felt able to do this and to seem to be popular as he does it. A national energy emergency, not a global climate emergency, apparently, a national energy emergency. Something else that Trump spoke about in his speech quite a bit was he attacked identity politics, and he attacked what is called often now wokeness. But here's something really important to remember. Whatever your views on identity politics, and mine are quite critical, climate is not woke. Climate is just the facts. Climate and ecological decline, biodiversity decline, general environmental hazards that we've been multiplying for a long time on our planet now. These are facts. You can deny them if you want, but it doesn't change them. The atmosphere doesn't care whether you deny them or not. It goes on just as it is. Climate is not woke. And if Trump goes ahead at his word in this inaugural speech with this national energy emergency, then far from the golden age of America being ushered in, which is part of what he promised in this inaugural speech, what we will certainly get is an acceleration of decline. Why will we certainly get it? Because we will have multiplying, ramifying climate disasters and other kinds of unnatural disasters. And if nobody moves to cut those off at root with any sufficient gravity and determination, and if in particular America does not seek to adapt transformatively and strategically to climate decline, if it pretends that that decline is not happening, if it seeks to act as if there actually is no climate emergency and just a so-called energy emergency, this will multiply its problems. It will multiply the ill effects of future fires like those which are still burning now in LA, and of the insane floods and storms that we've seen across America and across the world over the past several months. Climate is not woke. The atmosphere is neither woke nor non-woke, right? The atmosphere just is. And far from seeing a golden age of America, if Trump does what he declares in this inaugural speech, we will see an acceleration of decline. That arguably is exactly why Trump goes on and on about making America great again, golden age, etc., as a kind of blind for the fact that his policies are going to make things worse. Now, what can we actually do about this? And here I want to get quite concrete. You have to take adaptation seriously. We have to start doing it now. We have to start doing it in whatever way we can, at whatever level we can. For many of us, what that's actually going to amount to is adaptation, resilience building, preparedness, where we live in our local communities. You can do a certain amount of this as household prepping, as ruggedization for yourself and your family, but only a certain amount. What are you going to do if your neighbors come round and they're starving? What are you going to do when a wildfire whips through your entire neighborhood and embers start flying into your house or onto your roof, etc.? There are some things you can do to prepare individually, but most of what you can do to prepare and to make yourself less vulnerable to what is coming, to what Trump's ascendancy to the presidency ensures is going to come even worse, most of what you can do is at the community level, at minimum at a neighborhood type level. So we need to get serious about this if you haven't already started doing so. We need to get serious about it because more of this is coming. We already knew that, but Trump's inaugural speech underscores just how badly this is going to be the case. And this, crucially, is part of what it means not to give up. We need to take responsibility in the face of the absolute irresponsibility of this new president. Now I want to turn to another dimension of Trump's speech. And if anything, this is even more shocking and terrible and nonsensical than the stuff about climate that I've already been talking about. Trump says he's going to bring in the External Revenue Service. This is basically about tariffs, etc., at the borders. Now, of course, there are ways in which this could conceivably not be a terrible idea. It is reasonable for countries and nations to protect themselves against cheap foreign imports, etc., in ways that have not been observed during this era of hyperglobalization that we've been in. But of course, the frame in which Trump is presenting this is one of America first, of only caring about the United States, only caring about his own people. And that isn't a frame in which we can have any kind of idea of protectionism being for the protection of humanity as a whole. I know that's kind of obvious, but I think it's worth laboring the point, because sometimes Trump tries to make it sound as though what he's doing is actually for the benefit of humanity. But of course, what he actually goes on about, and what these policies are actually about, if they're about anything, is a way of instituting his policy of America first. And that's no way to protect anything adequately. What this is all about is what gets expressed in his inaugural speech when he speaks about dignity, power, and strength. And I noticed, I don't think I'm overreading this, that when he said the word strength, it seemed to matter a lot more to him than when he said the word dignity. What this new politics, which is also very old politics, boils down to is might makes right. What is at risk of occurring here is the rise of might-based societies, which do not care about other societies, do not care about rules-based orders, do not care about humanity. Ultimately, of course, they don't really care about a future. They will fold in on themselves, they will decline. But in the meantime, something really horrible and dire could occur. Imagine a boot stamping on the face of a human being for quite a long time. We risk the return here of might-based societies, of the old idea of might makes right, the kind of idea which is being resisted by, for example, Donald Tusk, the Prime Minister now of Poland, who's trying to take back his country from the hard populist right that infected it and its governance until very recently. Trump said, and I'm quoting more or less now, America will regain its place as the most powerful and respected nation on earth. It will be treated with awe, he said. Trump wants other countries to be afraid of America. He wants to show dominance. It's a very traditional idea of what it is to be a male and to be a leader, traditionalist, arguably outdated, but it is one that fits with having other leaders in our world, such as Erdogan, Putin, Xi. Trump is their counterpart, and in some ways, he's going even further than them. He spoke specifically about taking back the Panama Canal. He spoke towards the end of his speech of expanding our territory, of America's, quote, manifest destiny, unquote. These are old tropes of American dominance, so-called exceptionalism. He mentioned the word exceptional in this context in his inaugural speech. The manifest destiny he's now extending to an interplanetary dimension. Allegedly, the stars and stripes are going to be planted on Mars. We need to be clear that the kind of world that we've lived in, which has, to some extent at least, had a rule-based international order, is now under very severe threat. We need to seek to defend that rules-based order, but we also need to be honest that with so few champions, powerful champions around the world, perhaps the EU may be one, with so few powerful champions, that order is now extremely vulnerable. And what does this mean? What are the implications of this? Well, once again, what I think it comes down to is the risk, the very real risk that the future will be more violent, more uncertain, that long supply lines may be threatened, that if we don't have local and national resilience to a much greater extent than we have at the moment, we may bitterly come to regret that. So in this second part of this direct, where I've focused on the evidence in Trump's speech that we are in for an era where we're getting closer to might makes right than we have been for a long time, the moral is very similar to the moral of the first part of this direct, where I spoke about Trump's direct threats to our climate regime. We need to seek to adapt transformatively and strategically together at every possible available level. That includes nationally, that includes internationally insofar as that's possible. At the other end of the scale, it includes at the household level, the most basic level possible. But above all, it is going to come back to community and collectivity. We are likely to need each other over the next generation in a way that we haven't for the last couple of generations. And you can see the reasons for that need in Trump's speech, and you can see how those reasons are extrapolations of trends that are already present in our world today, but that are being intensified now with the return of Trump to the presidency. So that is my message to you here today. Don't give up. Get concrete about what we can do to take care of each other and to maintain and hopefully grow the seeds of a better future, which may eventually be able to come. But it is going to be a considerable time before there is a strong chance of that future. We may be entering into a new dark age. We are certainly entering into a period that is fearful and uncertain to a greater extent than has been the case for a long time. The climate more than emergency, the ecological more than emergency, the rupturing of planetary boundaries, all these things show and ensure that that is true. Trump will make them all worse, and by moving in the direction of might makes right, as he is seeking to do, he will make them worse still. So, you have been warned. Let's do what we can to build solidarity and struggle in something different together, because we can.